we're live. Are we good? All right. Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this evening's regular meeting of the Tigard-Tualatin School Board. I will now call the meeting to order at 6:29 p.m. Really quickly, before I get to the agenda, I did have some, and this is just kind of a informational piece. I've had, since there's been a lot more people watching some of our meetings or listening in, I did get some community members having some questions just about what the different parts of the agenda are. And so I just wanted to kind of give a quick refresher or just kind of a quick intro to what the different pieces are and their purpose within the meeting. And that way, as folks are listening in, they can kind of have a better understanding of what each of those sections is. And so typically at the beginning, we'll approve an agenda or consent agenda. So there are lots of pieces inside that agenda, and we approve them typically all at once, unless someone calls out a piece of that. The recognition and good news is really just that. So that is when different, it could be a focus on a student group, a program, something within the district, or a community partner. They come in and we get to celebrate them or that program or those achievements. And this was kind of where some questions came in. So the student representative reports are exactly that. They just kind of give an update for their school if there is one that week. And that is actually the same for the superintendent and board communications. So the purpose of that, because we don't see each other typically in between, sometimes at some meetings or things like that, but in between these board meetings, that is really the time where we get to sort of update each other on what we've been doing the last couple of weeks. So if we were at a meeting, if we went to a conference, if we visited a school. So that's really the purpose of that communication, and that's where Dr. Sue will give her kind of updates as what's been happening as well. So that's sort of the purpose of that board communication. And then we get to the reports and discussion, which are items that are on the agenda that we don't vote on. And then when we have action items, those are the items that we do take a vote on. So, and then the board member reflection is something that we added this year. And that is something that is sort of a time for us if we want to just have something top of mind that we want to put in the agenda for the next week or have some more discussion about. That's sort of the time that we can publicly talk about that. So I just wanted to clear that up and sort of explain that a little bit moving forward so that if you are newer to watching our meetings, you sort of understand what those pieces are. So with that, Dr. Ricky Smith, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are none, Chair.
All right, hearing that, I would entertain a motion.
I would like to pull item 3 from the consent agenda. That's the second reads of board policies, and make that an action item, a new section 8.
All right, section 8. For the board policy. All right. So hearing that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended, pulling out that section to be action item under section 8.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion was made by Director Zerschmidt and seconded by Director Weston. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a call vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? All right, motion carries. And with that, we will move to recognition and good news.
Good evening, Chair Irvin and directors. I have the pleasure this evening of introducing our good news and recognition around our CommuniCare partnership. I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Schlegelmilch with the Schnitzer Care Foundation to share the program and partnership that we have here at TTSD.
Could I have you go to the next slide, please? Perfect, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Kelly Schlegelmilch, as you heard, and I'm the program manager for CommuniCare, which is a youth grant-making program of the Harold and Arlene Schnitzer Care Foundation. In CommuniCare, student groups act as mini foundations, and they begin the school year by selecting a community issue or service area that they're passionate about. Most groups are then guaranteed $7,500 from the CARE Foundation for their grant making, and they can double those funds by raising an additional $750 in the winter months, which the CARE Foundation matches 10-1, up to a maximum gift of $15,000. Students then spend the rest of the school year completing the grant making process, evaluating grant applications from local nonprofits, meeting with representatives from some of those organizations, and deciding which to fund. Students can also grant up to 25% of their funds to programs at their school. We are thrilled that CommuniCare officially takes place at 4 schools in the Tigard-Tualatin School District, including Creekside Community High School, which has a CommuniCare club, Tigard High School, which has 2 sections of Avid 10, which participate in the program, Tualatin High School, which has a CommuniCare club and also their IB seminar class participating in the program, and Tualatin Middle School, which also has a CommuniCare club. Grantmakers from Tualatin High School's club also uniquely partner with students from Hazelbrook Middle School for a portion of their grant-making process. We're here to offer a recap of the incredible work that grantmakers across the district did last year. The grantmakers are truly what makes this program great, and I'm so excited to have 5, but actually a few more supporters in the crowd of those grantmakers with me here tonight to tell you more about their experiences and their impact. I'd like to give a special shout out to Nathan, Akash, Sydney, Atticus, and Marsh, who will be presenting a little bit for you tonight. And I'm going to officially hand things over to Nathan, Akash, and Sydney to tell you more about the CommuniCare Club at Tualatin High School. And with that, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, Kelly. We are grant makers from the Tualatin High School CommuniCare Club, and I want to talk a bit about our service areas. So in years past, we focused on issues that we have seen in our local community, such as homelessness, food insecurity, and for last year, environmental protection. We considered many different service areas each year and participate in multiple different discussions as a club before we come to a vote where we landed on organizations that focused on forest protection and rehabilitation to combat wildfires that have ravaged Oregon's natural environment.
Our club has a unique opportunity to plan and run our school's homecoming dance. And while daunting at first, it's an incredible opportunity to fundraise and make a difference. From ordering decorations to crafting a list of songs to setting up the check-in tables, our members worked tirelessly to put on an amazing dance. The opportunity and success of the dance allowed us to fundraise over $10,000 prior to the match from the CARE Foundation.
We were proud to have donated over $25,000 last year to both local nonprofits and in-school programs, from the Crag Law Center, an environmental law group, to the Forest Park Conservancy, the Friends of the Columbia Gorge, to the High Desert Partnership, a rural nonprofit creating sustainable biofuel from the remnants of forest fires. The organizations we supported work to attack different environmental issues from so many different angles.
There's a lot to take away from CommuniCare. It allows teams to use their voices and have a say in the changes they want to see in their community. Through the constant need to go back and forth between the club, the advisors, and the nonprofits, CommuniCare also really helped us to develop our communication skills. One of the highlights from last year was the end of the year banquet that we got to attend. This was a really special moment for everyone in our club because we got to meet representatives from the nonprofits we had funded that year. We got to hand them these big novelty checks we had made, and just seeing their smiles was so precious. Knowing that you are making a difference, even if it is just putting a smile on someone's face, is a really powerful feeling, so this moment will stick with us for a long time. Next, I would like to introduce Atticus and Marsh to tell you about CommuniCare at Creekside.
Good evening. I'm Marsh. I'm a member of last year's CommuniCare Club at Creekside Community High School. Last year, we chose to support the rights, safety, and protection of trans youth. We chose this service area because we would like to help trans youth feel safe and protected, as everyone deserves to feel a sense of safety at schools and all other public places.
For our fundraising activities, we had many creative ideas. We made gratitude grams, collected cans and bottles for a bottle drop, gave and collected donations from our community. Fundraising allowed us to share our mission statement and goals widely.
We granted money to 3 nonprofit organizations, including Call to Safety, Lines for Life, and New Avenues for Youth. We also gave money to some programs at our school, including the Food Access Club, Queer Club, and School Therapy Dog Committee. Altogether, our grants totaled $15,700.
Communicare has really helped me to gain confidence in my leadership skills. It's taught me what the behind the scenes looks like in nonprofits and has given me an idea of what I want to do when I grow up. I love the idea that we are dedicating so much time to help improve other nonprofits that will help in a big, meaningful way. I also love the fact that it's all in the students' hands to make the decisions. Feeling like I have a real and direct impact on the outcome of how things improve people's lives is a very positive and genuinely amazing feeling. I love Communicare because it's pushed me to grow and to feel like I truly am a leader, even starting now.
Sorry. Um, we also wanted to shine a light on the other programs in the Tigard-Tualatin School District who focused on service areas that included support for refugees and immigrants, services for survivors of domestic violence, access to medical and mental health resources, and access to food. Altogether, grantmakers from across the district granted over $88,000 to 18 nonprofits and nearly $20,000 to in-school programs for a total of $108,000 supported. We are excited for another fantastic year of Communicare in the 2023 to 2024 school year. We're also proud to announce that all of the schools that participated last year will be continuing their participation into this year, and programs at Creekside have expanded their services to multiple different student groups through their Action Squads programming. Tigard-Tualatin School District grantmakers are going to make another huge impact this year, and we can't wait to report back. Thank you for your support and have a great evening.
We might have a couple minutes for questions, or I can welcome students back up if you have anything you want to ask them.
Yeah. Questions, comments from my colleagues? Director Weston?
Thank you, Chair Irving. I just want to thank all the students for all their work. I really appreciate seeing the young people in our community lead the way, and I love that everyone's thinking about the best way to use the funds and thinking through problems and solutions in the community. So thank you for that great work and leadership.
I want to say also thank you for this amazing program. I mean, we want programs that teach kids leadership skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, collaboration skills. This is exactly that, and it has very obvious, clear connections to real world events. And so in terms of preparation for career after high school, this is an amazing program, and I'm super pleased to hear all of what the students had to say. That was great. And I just want to mention to them that it sounds like all those skills you guys are learning will be great if you ever want to run for school board.
Director Miles?
Director Zershmi just stole what I was about to say, but thank you for. I was just thinking as you were presenting that this is not only a program that gives to you, that you give back, but it gives to you as well. And so it's so nice to see you are learning and applying real world skills in a way that then gives back to the community in such a meaningful way. And so thank you for doing that. What a wonderful program.
Vice Chair? And I would just sort of reiterate yet again what my colleagues have said. And I'm curious, and I know, Atticus, you have a mic near you, but if anyone else wants to come back up, sort of what were some of the, I mean, when you're looking at all these grants and all these choices you have to make, what was that experience like when you had to sort of decide where you were going to be kind of putting some of those funds and maybe where not, and sort of what did that feel like to kind of have to make some of those tougher decisions?
It was definitely a very difficult decision because when it comes down to it, all of these organizations and nonprofits are doing incredible work in their communities and in ours. So when it came down to it, we really had to focus on what we initially wanted to support. So I remember a few years ago when we were focused on homelessness, there was a organization that we just truly loved. We had such an amazing interview with them and our hearts wanted to support them so much, but when it came down to allocating funds, it just wasn't really in our budget to do so. And so we had to look back on what we had discussed with our theme statement, our mission statement at the beginning of the year, and how that was applying to all the nonprofits we were looking at. And unfortunately, it just didn't quite meet the criteria we were looking for because they didn't provide any housing for homeless people. So that was one of the hard decisions we had to make, but we did that in staying true into what we initially wanted to support. But we ended up making a gift for them and delivering it to them in person to show our support for them. So it was a really hard decision, but we just had to stay true to what we initially wanted to support.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I just have to I had an echo that basically just like I definitely agree that there were all nonprofits are so helpful and they all have their specific groups of who they're helping, and I think that really sticking with the mission statement of what we wrote with at the beginning is really how we make those decisions, because it is a very difficult decision, choosing to not give money to somebody who took their time to apply and to interview, and so it's disappointing, but it's definitely, a hard decision, but easy if you're going along with the criteria of how you are working with Communicare.
Yeah, that's sort of like that really interesting lesson within a lesson too, of kind of having to continue to kind of, and we've all had to do that as well, kind of go back to what is the mission statement, what is that main goal, and how are these fitting in. It doesn't mean those other things aren't good, right? But just kind of having to make those tough choices. So that's awesome. And it's funny because I went to BizTown this last week, which is part of my sort of board update report, but it reminds me of sort of like, high school version, but like real funds being used, and those like kind of BizTown teaches you sort of like the fake fun, real way to do some of that business work, or the, pay your bills and write your checks. And this is kind of like 3.0 of BizTown, where you are really looking at grants, doing those interviews, allocating funds, sort of seeing that thread through from something like BizTown in elementary school is really cool. So thank you so much. It's amazing.
I just want to end by saying that we're so grateful for the partnership with the Tigard-Tualatin School District. As you can see, these students, these grant makers, they're amazing. And that's really why Communicare exists, is that we trust young people to know what's best for their community and how to allocate funding accordingly. So they never fail to amaze us and impress us and give us so much hope for the future. Thank you so much for having us and letting us just put this work on display a little bit more, so more people know the amazingness that's going on in the district. I have a few brochures that I'll leave, so if anyone would like to take one to learn a little bit more about the program, there's also some contact information there as well if you have any follow-up questions. But again, just thank you so much for having us, and grant makers, thank you so much for the work that you're doing to build an even better community.
Thank you so much.
All right, and now we are going to take a moment in honor of National Veterans Day and the service of our community members. We express our gratitude and appreciation for Tigard-Tualatin staff who have served and continue to serve their communities and country in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. So please take a moment with this next slide and see the different folks that we have that we're honoring this month, from our operations team to our admin to our teachers. We have several members that are current or retired service members. And earlier this evening, you all approved the proclamation in honor of Veterans Day and in honor of our staff.
Thank you so much. Comments?
Oh, you go first.
Go ahead.
Just want to thank everyone for their service.
I'll echo that, but flesh it out a little bit. The service to your country is a really amazing thing, a selfless act. Service to kids is another really selfless act, hard in very different ways. And I just really appreciate that we have so many staff members who serve kids and who serve our country, and so thank you.
Director Zerschmied stole my words this time. A little word stealer this one today. But I remember that from last year, and just that sort of idea of, that sort of doubling down almost on service, and really the service to your country, and then coming back to either home or a new home, and then really serving a community of kids and families and fellow teachers and staff. And so what an incredible honor it is to have all of you in our district. Thank you.
I'll just echo that. I am a daughter of a veteran, and so I just want to thank everybody for their service as well, and thank you for showing us who on our staff is somebody who's served the country as well.
All right, and with that, we will move to our student representative reports. Whoever would like to go first.
All I have to say this week is that there's not much to say. Halloween was very fun. We had a good time, and we are having. I've been absent a bit more often recently, but I think the Day of the Dead celebration passed, and that was something that my school was very excited about as well.
At Tigard, things are running very smoothly. It's definitely feeling like, I feel like I say this all the time, but I feel it's really beginning to feel like school. The end of the quarter is this week, so many people are rushing to get those assignments in before Wednesday. Our football team won their first round of playoffs this last week, so this Friday we're going up against South Salem. Sherwood. Sorry, thank you, Owen. And November 1st was a very exciting yet stressful day for our seniors because many college applications were due.
Yeah, just adding on to that, even though coming up Wednesday is kind of crunch time, I'm really excited for the long weekend, no school November. And there was actually a celebrity sighting today, or in Tigard last week. I was pleased to see Dr. Sue in our halls, and going through, just seeing how Tigard High is run, going from bus pickup and drop off to transition to lunches, and how each individual class is going. And I think she's gonna, if I remember correctly, she's gonna be throughout the month at Tigard. So we're excited to see her there. And other than that, I'm excited to cheer on Tigard and Sherwood.
Intercambio has its first mentoring session tomorrow. We're really excited to welcome the Tualatin and Hazelbrook kids to Tualatin, and then the Fowler and Tualatin kids to Tigard. Hopefully it will go really well. We're trying out a lot of new stuff in the Tualatin realm. I'm not too sure about Tigard, but they always kill it, so woohoo!
Tualatin football won comfortably over Tigard and Roosevelt the past 2 weeks, and should we both win again this week, we could see a rematch in the playoffs next week. In general, things are just going really well. The only thing that's been like a little weird is we've had a lot of fire alarms lately because they're like messing with the system to like update it. But you know, that's obviously like a necessary measure, so you can't really complain too much.
That is wonderful. And with that, we'll move to superintendent and board reports. Dr. Sue.
Thank you so much. So it's been a busy couple of weeks since we were all together on the 23rd. First and foremost, on the 30th, we had an opportunity to meet with the TTEA Behavior and Discipline Committee and provide them, thank you, Directors Zerschmied and Miles, a beginning draft of the policy addressing aggression and violence. And we sought their feedback, which we provided for the second draft. And then on the 31st, we had the opportunity to judge the Tualatin High School annual staff Halloween costumes, and they were amazing. The winner this year was the counseling staff that made themselves look like a car wash, and so it was really amazing and worthy of first prize. Well done. And then had the opportunity to spend some time with Thor and his amazing students in tech production. And they were the ones that produced this week's too with Dr. Sue. And so kudos, Thor, to you and to your students. They did an amazing job and actually made me look good, which is not all that easy to do. And then Owen and Rima and many other students are blessed with my presence here for the next several weeks, as I've made a commitment to being in schools for extended periods of time so that I can get into classrooms. And so far I've been into about a third of the classrooms at Tigard High School, and we'll continue those visits. But also as part of that, I have an opportunity to get back to my roots as a school administrator and assist in the halls and during lunch duty and have some really great conversations with kids. So really have enjoyed the time there and look forward to all the other visits yet to come. Relative to this week with Sit with Sue will be this Wednesday at Tualatin Middle School, and then we will have made our first push to hold a Sit with Sue in every school with staff. And then nothing would please the superintendent more than if Tigard knocks off Sherwood this week and Tualatin takes care of Nelson, so that we could have a rematch of the Tigard-Tualatin playoffs, this time on neutral turf, which would be at the Hillsborough Stadium. So looking forward to you all making that happen. But have a number of colleagues at South Salem who have not returned my calls, interestingly enough. And I'm hopeful that that'll be rectified soon. But that's what I have to share this evening.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Who would like to start us off on our updates? Dr. Zerschmied, I'm looking at you.
Well, I'm not sure I should go first because I'll say words that somebody else is going to want to say.
That's okay.
As Dr. Sue mentioned, it's been a busy couple of weeks. I feel like I've been in meetings even more than normal between Sit with Sue's that start at some delightful hour like 7:15 in the morning. There's also world language curriculum going on, math curriculum adoption going on, the long range facility planning. Obviously, I'm involved in drafting the policy, and I think I'm actually up to draft 4 or 5 now on that, given the number of times that feedback has come in. But I'm really looking forward to the meeting with the public, with the community on Thursday to get another round of feedback on that, because I think it's really important that we get that policy absolutely where it needs to be. I'm also really looking forward to the OSBA convention this coming weekend. I know Director Miles is looking forward to it. Suddenly that got very loud. It's been our past practice on the board that those board members who go to the OSBA conference come back and give a synopsis of the sessions, and I just wanted to make sure that we still are planning on doing that again this year. I believe there are going to be 3 of us who are attending. One of us is going to be working. I'm not sure if Vice Chair is going to be able to make it this year. No, I didn't think so. that pesky day job, you got to do something about that. But yeah, that's what I got.
Fantastic. Would like to go next? Anyone?
I could go next.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Chair Irving. So I've also been participating in our curriculum committee with the English language development. I've really learned a lot from our educators that are working in that area, and it's really interesting to see some of the really quality and maybe not as awesome curriculum. So that's been really excellent. I also wanted to say that I look forward to everyone's comments today and on Thursday. Thank you to everyone's work on the policies pertaining to violence in schools. And I look forward to seeing that continue to develop. I also wanted to take a moment to share my thoughts on the topic of resources as we watch our neighbors to the north. I feel that all of our challenges are linked as a community and a state. I want to express appreciation for the state legislature and Governor Kotek for the increase in funding for the state school fund last May to $10.2 billion, truly more than ever before. At the same time, inflation does make everything cost more than ever before. Property tax limits from measures 5 and 50 mean that local taxes can only rise 3% per year, local property taxes, but inflation is well above that level. Inflation increased 7.8% between 2021 and 2022. If inflation goes up 10%, property tax revenue goes up 3%. If inflation goes up 50%, property tax revenue goes up 3%. That's a structural problem that can't be solved by cutting out the morning latte. As property taxes fund a smaller percentage, local schools become more and more dependent on the budget out of Salem. And that means it is fiscally responsible to have a financial cushion. It also means that the state must step in with a bigger and bigger share for education over time, which will squeeze out everything else. Our challenges can't be solved on a shoestring. We need a longer school year, reasonable class sizes, and we show people how we value them by compensating them appropriately. Who is at fault? We are, as citizens. I hope we can stand up and take a hard look at our priorities in Oregon. Thank you.
Director Miles?
Just a couple of things. I've appreciated being on the policy committee. We've had at least one meeting since last time we were here. That's good work. That's fun work. And I too am looking forward to the OSBA convention. I will be in every session. Well, not in every session, but I will be presenting in every single session. So I'm happy to give a report on the quality of the sessions when I come back as a presenter. Hopefully everybody can go, and I'm excited to hear everybody's thoughts as well. Thanks.
Vice Chair? No? All right, I just have a couple things. Let's see. So I mentioned before BizTown, which is such a fun experience, and this is my youngest kiddo is now in 5th grade, so it's my last BizTown experience. So it was a bittersweet BizTown. And if you aren't familiar, it's a junior achievement program where you go to this sort of refurbished kind of warehouse space, and there's all these sponsored businesses, and kids have been given a job, and they sort of understand what their role is. So you have CFOs and CEOs, and like in the bank, you would have tellers and a loan officer, and there's a cable company, and there's an gas and electric company, and stores and a cafe, all the things. And so it's really like a very small sort of one day adulting. And at lunchtime, because you get a break, and on your break, you get to cash your paycheck and get some food and go shopping and get like a squishy ball or something. But I was sitting next to a kiddo, and he sits like this, and he's like, man, this is exhausting. And I was like, it is. And I was like, is it adulting? Is it hard? He's like, yes. He was like, now I understand why my dad is so tired every night. And it was the sweetest sort of like, it was funny, and also like that little piece of empathy that was like, okay, they kind of understand, like this is a lot of work. And that was only like 47 minutes. So anyway, that was really, really fun. They did a great job. Everyone at Durham did a fantastic job. We had Art in the Burbs, which was a smashing success. Oh my goodness. We had the long range facilities planning meeting. That was really great. We had some new community members come to that meeting, and so it was really great to see even more perspectives and ideas and sort of thoughts around what that long range planning would look like. And I think that's it. And then again, I will be at the conference, and so we will be sharing back those sessions that we attend next time. I think that's all I have. And with that, I believe we have one public comment I want to confirm. All right. So let's see. Is Chris Hodap here? Perfect. And I will, don't have it up. Let me grab it really quick and I will read I'll read my public comment intro, which I of course don't have. Okay. All right, so just to reiterate the expectations for public comment, after being recognized by the board chair, you will identify yourself with your full name and zip code of residence. Public comments are shared with the board during the public comment portions of the meeting and are limited to 3 minutes, which you will have up on the screen to be able to check your time. Your comment should be brief and concise. Please be aware the time will start once you have given your name and zip code. You may also submit written public comment, which will be read by the board and become part of the public record, including the meeting minutes. It will not be read aloud at the meeting. Speakers may offer objective criticism of school operations and programs. The board will not hear comments regarding any individual district staff member, board member, or any person connected with the school system. If the current public comment agenda item exceeds 30 minutes, the period may be extended at the discretion of the chair to ensure all TTSD students and parents are heard. This is no place for bias or hate. There will not be profanity or language that minimizes or causes harm to anyone else's identity per policy ACC. If such language occurs, the speaker will forfeit the remainder of their time and be removed from the meeting. This is no place for violence or threats. There is an active investigation continuing. Any threats or threatening language will be taken seriously and will include follow-up with law enforcement. So with that, you can give your name and zip code and we'll begin the time.
Name is Chris Hodap Baker, zip code 97223. I'm also a representative for the Parents' Rights in Education and a child advocate for Washington County. I'm here to speak about accountability and transparency regarding State Admin Rule 584-235-0010. This states an admin can authorize the start and closing of an investigation of complaints of abuse and misconduct through their state, district, and school policies to make their own professional judgments to escalate as they see fit. There are local, state, and federal laws and standards which instruct staff through each step to follow through every incident that happens with the students. Many of the codes are being updated to denounce violence and address acts of violence, but the accountability code needs to be updated for the safety of the students. If the same staff member that starts and closes the investigation, then all the updates you're working on now won't change a thing and the violence will still continue. A new accountability code needs to be added to stop the ability for the staff member that started the incidents cannot be the same person that closes an investigation. A different staff member needs to be close investigation, review all the supportive actions that were completed, or follow up with ones that was not. The stories shared by over 100 parents within the school district recently have shown a routine response to the lack of contact with the parents and support when the child was involved in the incident. For example, the 6-year-old boy was on a school bus the first week in kindergarten. The fifth grader, who is also known for fighting in acts of violence against students in the past, chose the 6-year-old boy that day to take out his anger. He was assaulted and hit on the head multiple times for 20 minutes by an 11-year-old without intervention by an adult. The boy was physically hurt. After the assault, he left the bus with a serious head injury that caused his brainstem to be pushed into his spinal cord. He suffered a traumatic brain injury that required brain surgery 2 years later. He is permanently disabled for the rest of his life and has spent the last 5.5 years in a learning center instead of a normal classroom. Like the stories the other parents shared, the investigation ended in 2 days without any support for either of the students. The bus video showed a 6-year-old assaulted for 20 minutes, no support followed up from the school, and parents were never contacted. The SRO officer was dismissed from the incident when he was told there's nothing concerning on the video. The 11-year-old parents learned that their child did 2 years later when they were served a lawsuit. The story about the 6-year-old boy, that is my son. In the school bus video shows that he does being assaulted and punched in the head several times while the other students tried to stop the violence that was happening. Nothing was done due to professional judgments that were made at the time of the incident, and therefore officers should not have been dismissed. Staff members' professional judgments have routinely closed investigations early to avoid having the report of the incident instead of escalating it properly to give the students support needed as an act. What would you do if this was your child? The video shows there was an actual video.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and I believe that is our only public comment for today. So we'll move into reports and discussion for first reads of some policies.
All right, good evening. This doesn't adjust, so I'm just going to sit up straighter. All right, so there's a couple of first reads that we have for this evening. The first one is around the family medical leave, version 1. So as we know that there has been shift to family medical leave due to the addition of paid leave Oregon, paid family medical leave insurance. And so the policy during this last legislative session, multiple bills were passed to amend the family leave options. So what you see here is actually a policy like the previous one was very intentional around splitting between, the size in which an organization is. But the new policy is now just strictly written. We had the option version 1 or 2, depending on our size. Version 1 is what fits our organization. So the policy is written with that in mind. So are there any questions around the family leave? We have a current one. We're going to delete the old one and then add this new version. Any questions on that one?
The only question I have is I couldn't tell, are we keeping or designee in the language, or are we taking that out? At the bottom of the family medical leave, the last sentence, superintendent or designee, but that's in brackets.
Yeah, so that's interesting, and we've got to figure out what this issue is, because in my copy on the computer, it shows out, struck out. So it will say superintendent or designee.
Okay, so it will have both.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, anything else? All right, so besides that one, then comes the actual new policy for the family, the PFMLI, which I just like to refer to as PLO, Paid Leave Oregon. But again, this is version 1. This is a brand new policy that we will be adding to all of our policies. And so there is nothing in terms of, is there something different from previous? We did not have this previously. So this is just making clear, especially for our staff, what they can expect with utilizing Paid Leave Oregon, and then the district's policy around its use. Any questions on that?
I really appreciate having this policy. My daughter does payroll for a small company, and so she is immersed in this, and she comes and tells me horror stories about how complicated this program is. So it's really nice that we have a nice, clean policy about it. So thank you.
Yes, and we'll see this come back up again probably around July when the rules shift again. And we'll have to make adjustments on how we are calculating the calendar year. So that is coming, but that shift does not happen till July. So we'll see this again and have to shift the language. Okay, perfect. All right, so those are all of the first reads we have for this evening.
you want to stay up here since we are bringing back?
Absolutely.
Okay. So with that, we'll go into our amended section 8 action item, which is, if it's in our packets, I believe page 9, looking at we're going to be the second read of board policies, and then Director Zerschmied, you can, I believe it's
BDBDA. Yeah. So BDBDA is the policy that concerns me. This should surprise none of my fellow board members that I'm bringing this back. And the phrase the part of the policy that I want to talk about is on page 3. It's section 2, communications outside of board meetings. And I want to start by saying that I really appreciate the intention of this policy. I know that public meeting law is a serious business, and I know that the law was changed, and so much of the changes in this policy are because of those changes in the law. I absolutely support the efforts to eliminate the problem of breaking public meeting law. It's something that I have worked very hard my entire time as a board member. However, the line that really bothers me here is where the one that starts with emails sent to other board members will have the following notice. Important, please do not reply or forward this communication if this communication constitutes a decision or deliberation towards a decision between and among a quorum of a governing body, which could be considered a public meeting. Electronic communications on district business are governed by public meeting law. That is all true, but I object to the idea of putting it in our email. I start by reiterating that those sort of signature file items are not best practice. I've spoken to people in the IT business and they agree. It isn't legally binding. It isn't seen after a reader has seen that thing 2 or 3 times. It simply isn't best practice. Also, this language is not in the state law. I read HB 2805 cover to cover. Best reading of my life. We are not required by law to include this language. And with all due respect for OSBA, I used to work there. This is bad policy, this particular part. Policy should be broad. We've always said that. Policy is the big picture. This is very specific language. This is language that every single board member must have in their email every time they send email to another board member. We don't provide specific language like this in any other policy that I'm aware of. We certainly don't dictate what somebody has to have in their email. So we would never say, for example, the superintendent will create an AR that says X, Y, and Z. We say the superintendent will create an AR that addresses this issue. So I would say we as a board need to adopt the same procedure here. We should say we encourage board members to include this, to include language that warns their fellow board member about the dangers of breaking public meeting law, but not dictating the specific words. Because if something goes wrong in the process of creating your signature file and you've left out one letter, technically you are now in violation of board policy. That's an ugly place to be. I don't want to have to be the cop for my fellow board members in that manner. When this says will, that means we must. That means that every board member must do this as soon as we've finished voting this evening. And it means that every new board member in perpetuity must do this. And I would challenge my fellow board members, when you first came on the board, did you have any idea that you should look up board policy BDA to find out what your signature file needed to be that day when you sent your first email to your board chair saying, hey, does this thing work? But a new board member who doesn't have it in place when they send their first email to a fellow board member is now in violation of board policy. So one of the things I want to do here is I want to try to save us from embarrassment and future board members from being like, oh my God, this is so complicated. I can't do this. I didn't know that was a policy. I mean, obviously it's not a huge big deal, right? But if we know we're setting up a situation where somebody's going to fail, why on God's earth would we do that? If this is so important, why is there no language about texting? We communicate by text. I would be willing to bet that there's more likelihood of public meeting law being broken during text than during email, and yet there's nothing in this policy that mentions texting at all. And then finally, and this is a silly one, I agree, but emails sent to other board members will have the following notice. Other board members doesn't mean just on this board. It means if I have a friend on another board in Sherwood and I send him email, I have to make sure this signature file is in that. If somebody, say, worked for another school district and was emailing a board member at that district, they would need to have this language in their signature file every time they email a board member in that other district. We take it to an extreme. I have a friend who is in Iowa. We have nothing to do with each other in terms of school boards. We went to college together, but she's on her school board. If I email her to ask her about her sons, do I have to include this disclaimer? And if that's the case, we're talking about now my personal email, right? I'm not sending her email from my board account, but there's nothing in this that says it has to be from your board account. So it means now my personal email, I have to have this signature file to as well. Well, now that's just stepped on my free speech rights. So when I say this policy is problematic, I really mean it. I'm looking at this from a picture from my history of 17 years on the board, 17 years of working policy. I think this is a bad idea. I think the fix is easy. And I'm going to stop lecturing, I promise. I'm suggesting instead that we amend the policy, either ideally delete this paragraph entirely, or change it to be permissive language. We encourage board members to do this, or it is recommended that. And I also suggest that we change the word other to fellow, because then it implies it's just among the 5 of us. So those are changes I would like to see on this. And I welcome my fellow board members' responses.
Director Weston.
I'd like to start off by saying that I like that Director Zerschmied has brought up a discussion, because I think too often we just vote without really thinking things through. So I do appreciate that. I don't have a strong opinion on this. I actually already changed my email signature. I do want to respond to the idea of detailed versus broad policy. We do have some policies that are broad, and we have others that are very detailed. And I don't think it's if it's a point you don't agree with, then I think that can stand on its own. The idea of throwing it out because it's too specific, I don't personally think that makes sense, because we do have things that are very specific, and I don't think policy has to be broad. It can be broad, but sometimes you want it specific and you want it actionable and you want accountability. So in that spirit, I don't like that element of it, because I think some policies do need to be specific. As far as the other board member, I don't think it reads that way, but I could see how it could. I support changing the language to or encourage to instead of shall. And thank you for bringing it up. I think it's important to have these discussions whether or not we agree. I appreciate that.
Thank you, and thank you, Director Zerschmied. I do see language like this in a lot of board member emails across the state. I think that something like this is important. That said, I appreciate your fix of suggesting it. I agree that policy should be usually necessarily broad, although Director Weston makes a good point that there are some policies that have some specifics in them. But that I would support changing it to encouraging other board members to, or fellow board members, that's fine. Also, I'm in favor of that as well. So I think that something in there encouraging us to to put some disclaimer that we could be accidentally creating illegal public meetings if we're sending this to a quorum of our fellow board members is a good idea. And so I wouldn't support eliminating that language entirely, but I appreciate your compromise in leaving that in with some caveats. And so I'm in support of that. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I would say that oftentimes we've kind of talked about being sort of like not necessarily uniform, but united. And so oftentimes, while I think we're thinking things through in terms of policy, we don't necessarily have more robust discussions because we're all often on the same page. And so in this case, I don't think that when we don't have discussion, we're not thinking them all the way through. But in this case, I do appreciate that you kind of wanted to come back to this. And I appreciate the sort of thoughtful way that you brought that forward. And the reasons, and I would absolutely agree, kind of as you began talking, I was like, it should just say recommended or encouraged. So I think if that works for the rest of the policy committee and all of that, I would absolutely think that we can make a motion if we're ready to do that, or we can wait for a second read of a. Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite. I'll get to the view. But yeah, so I think that I'd be in favor of that. Vice Chair.
I also want to say thank you to Director Schmidt for the points that she brought up. I think that they are very insightful, and I think that leaving it in with some permissive language is a great compromise. And I think that this is a great compromise. So thank you.
Look at that.
So then if it pleases my fellow board members, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the policies for second read BD, BDA, and BDC with an amendment to BD, BDA that the sentence under section, hang on a second, let me get the numbers, 2A after 4, that sentence now reads, it is recommended that emails sent to fellow board members should have the following notice.
I'll second that.
All right, motion was made by Director Zerschmidt and seconded by Director Weston. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, we'll move to a choral vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Can I ask for clarity on that so I can make sure I'm getting this accurately? So we are going to say it is recommended that emails sent to fellow board members
have the following notice.
That's all I needed. Thank you.
And thank you very much, everybody, for listening.
And that brings us to the end of our sort of formal meeting. Is there anyone that wanted something to bring up for our board member reflection? All right. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:28 p.m.